Hello, welcome back. New YouTube video, and today is a very special video for me because I'm joined by the friend of mine and the writer for Football Italia, Stephen Kasiewicz, who is an expert for all things Italian football and Scottish football, and um, it's a very exciting pair currently, Scottish and Italian football, not just because of Scott McTominay, but because of other Scottish players that we're going to discuss in this video. Hello, Stephen. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Lorenzo. Thank you very much for having me on. Very kind introduction there. Thank you.
So we start with two Scottish players who are going a little bit under the radars, but they're having a very good season indeed, and a very good first season in Serie A. And we're talking about Torino striker Che Adams and Napoli midfielder Billy Gilmour. Tell us a little bit more about them, what they're doing, what they're doing on and off the pitch in Serie A in the first season.
I mean, it seems like both players have settled extremely well. It's not easy to play your first season in Italy. I think there is one of the words actually that we'll speak later about Scott McTominay, he used in a recent interview is misconception. Maybe there's some misconceptions or some things about Serie A Italian football that are portrayed in a different way. And I think the Scottish players especially, of course, there's players from England as well in Serie A. They've all adapted extremely well. Che Adams has got 9 goals now for Torino in Serie A, and he's scored some excellent goals. Of course, he scored the goal from just inside his own half against Empoli, which I think we should say was one of the best goals of the season, or has to be up there in that category, like the vision, the technique to be able to pull that off and score that type of goal. He also scored a couple of goals against Parma recently. It was a really impressive finish off the underside of the crossbar. I think he's done extremely well, especially considering that Duvan Zapata was injured and ruled out for the whole season, which gave him some extra responsibility. And that can't have been easy because maybe he was expected to play alongside Zapata, maybe behind Zapata, or maybe actually there's a possibility he might not have got as many minutes because Zapata was very much the main man, the main striker for Toro. So I think given the added responsibility and the role that he's played, he's done very well this season. And I think if he reaches double figures and goals, I think that's an excellent return in your first season in Italy. I'm not sure that you can ask for much more than that as a striker in Italy. Sometimes I think people think about the stereotypes of Serie A from a long time ago that, you know, it's very defensive and defenses are difficult to break down. I guess some of that is still true in some ways. So the fact that, you know, he's able to score so many goals can only be like a massive positive. Although it is a much more open league, a much more attractive league to watch. He can maybe say also that he's been a little bit perhaps disappointed. He could have scored more goals. He's had quite a lot of chances. So perhaps he could have scored more, but I think at this stage in the season, very good return and he's done well. Definitely, I think he'll reach double figures in the last few games of the season.
In my fantasy football team.
Okay. Well, I hope he's done well for you.
As a figure, yeah. And he got 3 assists as well in Serie A.
Yeah.
So very, I mean, as you said, at the beginning, he was supposed to play either alongside Zapata. There were a few tactical tweaks for Torino as well, because they started with a classic 3-man defense, classic for Torino, obviously. But then they switched to 4-man defense in recent games. And at the beginning, he was kind of fighting with Antonio Sanabria for a starting spot with Zapata. But then, as you said, he became the main man for Torino in attack. And it's strange because he's not the classic centre forward you would expect. You would expect him more as a support striker, but he's been doing really, really well, even as a sole striker.
Definitely, yeah. I think to replace Zapata, who had done incredibly well for Torino, I think was pretty difficult. That's a big task to actually be asked to step in his place. And as you say, he was competing with Sanabria, who is pretty seasoned professional and, you know, knows Serie A very well. So I think in that regard, he has done extremely well. And I mean, I think he's probably met all the expectations that Torino would have had of him. I think he's probably matched them. Maybe he could have scored a few more, but I think he's done extremely well. With regard to Billy Gilmour, I think for Gilmour, it has been a very good season in some regards, and maybe in other regards, he could have perhaps been maybe a little bit disappointed that he didn't play so many games. I think at the very beginning, people said, well, he's an understudy, he's a deputy for Lobotka. I wasn't quite sure about that. I think I actually wrote something about that for Football Italia at the very start of the season or midway through the season. Also, I mean, it had been shown that he can play alongside Lobotka, but they do play in similar positions. And I guess in some ways it's very good for him that he has somebody to learn from. We can also say, though, he is a very experienced Scottish international. He's played at the very highest international level. He's played against all the top players for Scotland. So maybe for him there could be some, maybe very slight regret about this season. Although if Napoli go on to win the Scudetto, I think it will have been, a magnificent season. But whenever Conte is called on Gilmour, I don't think he's disappointed. And when Lobotka was injured, and Zambo Anguissa was injured, he called on him, and he really, for me, he played very well. He didn't disappoint. He played in a slightly different position than he usually did when Lobotka was there. And then he actually interchanged with Lobotka. They would move to just in front of the defence. They would take the ball. They would initiate the play. They would begin, the patterns of play. I think for many people, especially, I guess, the Napoli fans, I don't think they could have any complaints about Gilmour. I think when he's been called upon, he's done very well. And I think he will only grow and he will only get better. I remember when it was the San Siro and Conte gave him a big hug and a big embrace when he came off because he'd done so well. Obviously, Conte knows him from his time in Chelsea and would have known him from his time in the English Premier League. And clearly he trusts him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have identified him. Obviously, there's Manna, but Conte would have had a big role in the signing of Gilmour, you would think. And yeah, I think generally he's been very impressive, and he seems to have adapted again to Italian culture. There was a video that the official Serie A channel just put out today where he talks about he's learned some Neapolitan dialect. He's learning Italian, but that's been the difficult part. But I think he enjoys the weather. He is from near Glasgow. He is from, I think it's Ardrossan, which is a small town on the west coast of Scotland. And in that area, there's usually a lot of, I am from Glasgow, the west coast of Scotland, usually rainy and gloomy. So when you go from that to Napoli and wonderful weather, fantastic food, and you wake up every day and you see the sun shining, you can go to the beach and the coast and absolutely stunning landscapes. I think that's probably quite a big difference for him. And I think he said that in that video, that he's really enjoying the lifestyle and being there. And I'd imagine the food as well. I mean, the food in Italy, in every single city, town, part of Italy is absolutely wonderful. So I think, and you know better than anyone that when you taste food actually in Italy, it tastes so much different to an Italian restaurant in Scotland or England or America or Canada or all the places where the large numbers of Italians move to, and then they set up restaurants and cafes and other places. When you eat food in Italy, it really tastes different because it's so fresh and so flavorful. So I think they've mentioned that as well. So all those different things have contributed, I think. So he seems as though he's very content or happy away from the training ground. So then that's kind of transformed. He's kind of taken that, onto the field itself as well. And whenever he's been called upon, whether he's starting or he's coming onto the bench, to me, he's always made, a good impact.
Yeah, and one of the games he started is actually the big game Napoli-Inter, which was at the beginning of March. So, of course, game between the two main title contenders, and he started that game because Zambo Anguissa was injured. And again, he had a very, very good impact in the team. He finished 1-1. At that moment, Inter were on the rise, where Napoli, they had a kind of a slowdown, and they were trying not to. I mean, it was important for Napoli not to lose that game, because otherwise Inter would have gone too far away. And now, I mean, what they had to do is exactly what they have done. So try to be as close as possible to Inter, because at some point Inter would have a very long run of challenging games across all competitions, Coppa Italia, Campionato, Serie A in Italian, Champions League, and they got the job done, and at least for now, because there are 4 games remaining and there are 3 points above second place Inter. Another Scottish player who have had an interesting season, but because the previous one was pretty unlucky, is Lewis Ferguson at Bologna. He got injured pretty much at this time of the year last season, missed the final part of the campaign with Bologna, qualifying for the Champions League for the first time in 60 years, and this year returned with another coach, Vincenzo Italiano, replacing Thiago Motta. Not struggle at the beginning, because of course he was still recovering, but Italiano was getting to know his team, not just Lewis Ferguson. So he changed the lineup pretty often. He changed the starters pretty often, which is something that he still does. But slowly, Ferguson has got his minutes, and he has returned pretty steadily and consistently in the Bologna lineup. How have you seen his season?
Yeah, it's been a bit kind of stop-start, because as you say, he had the cruciate ligament injury at the very beginning, so he didn't actually start the season, which was unfortunate. And then he came back and he played in the Champions League games, the historic Champions League campaign. And as you say, Italiano, I guess it's also his style that he likes to rotate quite a bit. So he had to wait for his chance. In some games, he didn't necessarily play. Then he got he was the captain, and he got the captain's armband again. So he was back into the team for quite a few games, and it corresponded with Bologna's excellent run. When they defeated was it Lazio 5-0, and they had a lot of very, very good results. And Lewis Ferguson was obviously a big part of that. And then unfortunately he got a hamstring injury recently, and I think he's back and fit now, I believe. But I think it's been a difficult season for him, because previously he was connected with pretty big transfers to Juventus or Milan or even Napoli. And again, I saw relatively recently that he was again connected to Napoli. And there have been stories that I think you've written. Probably there have been stories about maybe Lobotka or Anguissa could leave, possibly. So then, what do Napoli do? They have McTominay and Gilmour. Do they bring in a third Scottish player? I mean, I think that would be unprecedented. It would be incredible for Scotland, this tiny little country, to have 3 players in the Napoli squad. It'd be unthinkable. Yeah,
and all potential starters. I mean, McTominay for sure. Then I think Anguissa is more likely to leave than Lobotka, because they have a not strange contract situation, but the club has an option to extend beyond the end of the season. But the player himself is probably looking for something different. He's 29, he's perhaps looking for a final challenge in his career. He's done a lot to Napoli. He's probably, along with McTominay, he's been the best Napoli midfielder this season. And it makes sense, especially given the use that Conte has made of Anguissa, to replace him with a player like Ferguson, who has done pretty much everything well. I mean, he knows how to play as an attacking midfielder. He knows how to play as a holding midfielder. He's very good with late runs, with the final pass, with his vision. He's a complete midfielder. And it seems a good fit. If Anguissa goes, there are a few rumors with Chelsea and Fenerbahce, especially in the last few weeks, linked with the Cameroon midfielder. I think Ferguson would be a good fit for Napoli. As you said, it would be interesting to see 2 or potentially 3 Scottish players starting midfield for Napoli. But it would be very interesting, because Anguissa has been very good close to the goal this season, with lot of goals and with lots of assists. And Ferguson has exactly the same.
Yeah, definitely. I was very fortunate to have an interview with Lewis. Maybe I think it was about 1 year ago, or maybe a bit longer. And
beginning of last season, so before their record campaign
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, and he, yeah, he. I think he talked about he was comfortable to play anywhere. Like it didn't make any difference to him where he played. And as you rightly say, he seems to be so adaptable, like tactically, that he can almost play anywhere. He was comfortable for some games being, kind of holding midfielder and then moving further forward. And I think in his first season he scored, was it 7 goals? I think so. And I think there's definitely the potential for more goals as well. But he's another one that's very comfortable in Italy. So I think that there had been talk about going to England, or maybe there was even the possibility of going back to Scotland with Rangers, I think was mentioned as well. But I think he seems so comfortable in Italy with the language. I think he's nearly fluent now. He gives interviews in Italian. He has also talked about how much he likes the lifestyle and the food. So I think he also mentioned in maybe other interviews that Napoli and I think in San Siro and Milan were two of the stadiums that he found really, the atmosphere was absolutely outstanding. So it would be a big challenge for him to go to Napoli, but I think it's one that he is definitely capable of rising to, and he has all the qualities. I know that in Italy, Ferguson is very highly regarded as well. It seems as though he's right at the top of the category of midfielders in all of Serie A, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, last season it was, very similar to the level of coverage, let's say, and respect from the media and from the fans that Joshua Zirkzee, for example, or Riccardo Calafiori then left Bologna after achieving what they achieved with the Rossoblu last season. It was just as important. With Thiago Motta was kind of a different role because he was more of an attacking midfielder. With Italiano, this season is a little bit different because he uses a lot Odegaard as an attacking midfielder, especially in the second part of the season. And so Ferguson does a little bit of everything. If you see the starting lineups and you see a 4-2-3-1 formation and you see Ferguson in among these two midfielders, you may think that he has become an older midfielder, but he's much more than that. He carries the ball forward, he scores goals, he provides assists, he has vision. He's a complete midfielder, really, not necessarily just an attacking midfielder as an older midfielder. And I really see him fit pretty well in Napoli's 3-man midfield, but in any midfield that needs a box-to-box midfielder. And talking about box-to-box midfielders, I want to show you some quotes that you've surely seen already from Antonio Conte today. And because he spoke about McTominay, and as usual, when Conte says something, it's never a cliche. It's never something to take very easily and lightly. And he spoke about McTominay today, saying that at Manchester United, he was never given a primary role, which is something that he got at Napoli instead. And this is why the Scotland international has been doing so well. So just let me find the quotes about McTominay. He says, this is interesting as well. He's clearly much stronger now than when he arrived. He also feels more complete and knowledgeable, and he's reaching a key stage in his career where he needs to decide his direction. He never had a primary role at Man United, while here we gave him one. He's worked hard and he's a complete player. His improvement has been shared by the whole team. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain how we've earned 74 points. What to add, Steve?
Yeah, there's not much more you can add to that. He's had a lot of coverage recently, understandably and justifiably so. To score 5 goals in 3 games is absolutely incredible. You could use any superlative, but let's go for incredible, especially at this stage of the season, like the crucial point of the season. He has stepped up to the mark. He has really pushed his game up to the highest level, especially in the Monza game where it looked as though it was heading towards 0-0. It was another one of these really disappointing draws. He scores the goal that decides the game, and really it's already been talked about as him being the MVP or the star man of the entire season. If Napoli win, and I think it's still an if at this stage, because it's gone. It's, as Conte also said, I think today, it's gone back and forth so many times that even though there's only 4 games left, I still think there is a potential for, some kind of slip up or some mistake by both Inter and Napoli. But yeah, for McTominay, he seems to already have this kind of idol or cult status with the Napoli fans. Like, I keep reading about people wearing kilts. I saw a video, someone's got a tattoo of them on their leg. And he's got all these nicknames.
Sport Italia, they even interview his chef, his personal chef. Because that sort of, a lot of hype for this interview with The Athletic, where he spoke about his diet, the tomatoes, and his personal chef.
That's
and
right.
So I actually found a personal chef in Napoli city center, and they got a 5-10 minutes interview with him talking about what McTominay eats, how is he as a person. So the hype on McTominay here in Italy is huge.
I guess for McTominay, he's provided like the spark or kind of the catalyst. He has been the one that has propelled Napoli to the very top at this such late stage in the season. I guess when we looked at the Scudetto before, you had Kvaratskhelia, you had Osimhen, and even this season you had someone like Neres who provided something different and would score a goal or create something. Of course, McTominay is a different player to all of these players, but he has provided Napoli with something that they obviously didn't have, which is that goal scoring from midfield. Everyone who's Scottish knows about him, obviously, because for the national team, he scored so many goals in qualifying for the European Championships, and he scored against Switzerland, although it was a very disappointing tournament for Scotland as a whole. So I guess if you're Scottish and you followed him, it's maybe not really a surprise what he's doing in Serie A, although I have to say that I didn't think he would do quite as well as he has done. So I think he's maybe exceeded or gone above the expectations of him, and he's gone to kind of superstar status, like especially with the Napoli fans. It's quite amazing to see that for someone who was clearly not appreciated by Manchester United for whatever reason, they decided to sell him. It was a big change, a big move for him, but he has really embraced everything in Italy, and he's taken his game to another level. And as Conte said in the quotes, it makes a big difference when you have a proper, you're played in your proper position, recognized position, one that you feel comfortable in, you can excel or you can thrive in. And that's what he's done. And I guess I would also say that maybe his defensive work is not quite as appreciated as well, because although he's known, for his his runs into the box and his late arrivals and getting on the end of crosses and passes, he actually, the amount of work he does tracking back and covering and providing support to the Napoli backline, maybe that has been slightly underappreciated, because if you really, his stamina is something that has been a big boost for Napoli as well. And obviously Conte's training regime is quite brutal, and they don't get any days off, and he just runs them, and they're absolutely exhausted after training sessions. But you can see the benefit on the field, and he has taken that approach, and you can see it in games. He's up and down the field, and he's very strong in terms of his actual his stamina and his his running stats or all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And it's very complete now with Buongiorno injured, with Neres injured. Conte has to change a little bit his lineup. He's going to start Raspadori in the next game, which is more of a center forward or support striker rather than a winger. So probably he's going to move slightly the formation, and probably we're going to see McTominay more of a left winger, I would say, even if he does move towards the wings anyway when he plays in central midfield for Napoli. So I think it's just something, you need to put a lineup down even for the media. And so probably it's going to be a sort of 4-4-2 formation, but this as well explains how well he's doing and why he's so important to Conte, because not just he's strong defensively, he's strong in attack, but he really helps in every area of the field. And Lukaku has 10 goals and 10 assists in Serie A, but probably McTominay has been even more crucial because he's he really is an hidden gem for what everyone could expect, because he's had the best season in his career in terms of goals scored. We've discussed a little bit about the Scottish players in Serie A. Perhaps there could be a new one. I mean, not necessarily, no done deals. We're not talking about agreements that have been made, but there have been rumors in recent weeks and recent months, and there's a Scottish player you would suggest to Serie A clubs.
Yeah. I think that the profile of Scottish players has obviously risen with all the success of the players in recent seasons. So the young midfielder for Motherwell, Lennon Miller, who's only 18 years old. There were many stories that Udinese had a bid for him rejected in January. So although he's very young, he's only 18. He's the captain of Motherwell. He's very comfortable on the ball. He's very strong passer, good technique. He's very good at getting out of enclosed spaces, which I think in Serie A is quite an important thing. So in these days of press, counter press, man on man, he's very good technically, and he has very good, different ways of getting out of small, tight spaces. And this is something that I think could really benefit him if he moves to Serie A. He's been connected or linked with moves, I think, to France. It was Strasbourg and maybe England. But it would not be surprising if Serie A clubs were looking at him, because I think the transfer fee would possibly be 4, 5, 6 million, maybe 6 or 7 million at the most. So this would probably fit into the budget of quite a few Serie A clubs. Although he necessarily might not be a starter immediately, he's an extremely promising player. I think he's the best of his generation, as far as I'm aware, in Scotland. And obviously the Scottish market is one that many clubs in Italy will look at because of the success of Aaron Hickey, who was young when he went to Bologna and did very well, and then he went to England. Lewis Ferguson, obviously McTominay and Gilmour and Adams. And I guess if we can mention Liam Henderson, who has been in Italy for a long time. He's been in Italy since 2018. He's played for many clubs, and he's played for Empoli. He D'Aversa has used him many times this season. Very good technical player. Sometimes it's not always in the conversation about Scottish players, but I think he has done, again, he's played extremely well in his career in Italy. So maybe the profile of Lennon Miller is one that fits, the transfer strategy or policy of, the sporting directors.
Josh Doig as well is another Scottish player, has been did pretty well at Verona this season. He got promotion with Sassuolo from Serie B.
Of course, yeah, Josh Doig has done very well too, and he'll be back in Serie A. Of course, he definitely deserves a mention because Sassuolo scored so many goals and played extremely well in Serie B, and he's done very well. So again, he's someone that is, I think, guaranteed probably to play a big role for Sassuolo next season. So yeah, Lennon Miller, I guess, is one to look out for. I think there is a possibility that he could move to Italy, but as you say, there is nothing decided yet. But in days of difficult transfer budgets and things like that, he is somebody that maybe his price tag, his profile, his skill set could be a good fit for quite a few clubs in Serie A.
And we hope to see him, of course, in Serie A, whether it's Udinese or any other club. Steve, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you and to know a little bit more about Scottish players here in Italy. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon again here on my YouTube channel.
Thank you very much for having me on. Great to talk to you. And before we go, I hope my team, Sampdoria, survives and they don't get relegated to Serie C. Let's hope. Okay. Thank you very much.
Fingers crossed. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.